Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Nerds of the North podcast. Episode number 23. 23 whole episodes in the books. Today, as always, I am host number one, Matt, and joining me today, as always, is host number two,
Nick. I was going to say my last name, but then I questioned it, so I'm just Nick.
Yeah, you're just Nick. Today, we're going to be talking about the finale of the smash hit from Disney Plus. What If?
Is this a smash hit? I'm not entirely sure.
I think it's lukewarm in terms of smash hits, but we are going to talk about the finale, and then we're going to talk about more or less like what our full opinion of the show is as a whole. And then we'll probably put it in some sort of standing with the rest of the Marvel properties that have come out of Disney Plus, with, WandaVision, Loki, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So, and then from there, we may go off the rails. God knows we record for longer than we probably should, but whatever. Our podcast, our rules. So, Nick, the finale, we'll start with the finale of What If. So what did you think about that? What are your opinions, thoughts?
Okay, first off, I apologize that my dog is drinking water right now. I don't know if you can hear that.
It's ASMR content for our...
Here, why do you have to do that right now? Okay. Anyway, so what I thought of the finale, I don't know, this show just leaves me feeling sort of like I don't care about anything that's happening on this show at this point. It's just I don't know if that makes sense, but I just at the end of it, I just feel nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it and I thought it was relatively well put together, like everything the MCU puts out basically, but I just didn't have any strong opinions about it either way, which in a way makes it worse than if it was bad. Because if it's bad, hilariously bad, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier for me, in a lot of ways, for me, that makes the show more memorable. But since the show is so meh in so many ways, it just did not resonate with me as something like this should have. Because I honestly love just the idea of the multiverse and this whole idea of all these different versions of these characters interacting and yeah, so the show should have been made for me, but I kind of just felt sort of meh by the whole thing. I feel like I'm reviewing the entire show now, not just the final episode. The final episode, yeah. I thought was probably one of the best ones, but I still didn't really feel anything about it afterwards.
Sure.
What was your opinion, Matt?
I mean, I think in terms of visually speaking, I think the finale was good. And I think the finale of this show for me was more exciting than the finale of Loki, for example. And honestly, I'd probably say even more exciting than the finale of WandaVision. But that's only in retrospect. When I initially watched the finale of WandaVision, it was such a huge deal because it was the first show of its kind, But the overall feeling that I was left with was just one of boredom, and something that I think the finale of What If was the most visually choreographed in terms of storytelling ever. It was just so on the nose about what was going to happen and when. If you haven't watched the episode, the spoilers, blah blah blah. But when Killmonger is examining the head of Ultron that he has in his possession in this episode, it's the whole episode is just him obsessing over this head of Ultron that he has. It's he's gonna be evil. He's the one villain that the Watcher brought in to help with this fucking assignment. And Killmonger's gonna do what Killmonger does, which is he's gonna be evil. I really wish they had done something a little more interesting with him in this episode, other than, oh, double cross. Like, of course he was gonna do that. Like,
Yeah, yeah, obviously, but I also was kind of wondering about Doctor Strange too, since he
mhm,
was an evil version of Doctor Strange. I thought that maybe he was going to betray them as well, but that was that was never choreographed. There was one point in the episode, I think it was Gamora was talking to Thor, and she was like looking over at Killmonger, and she said, "Do
yeah,
you
do you
trust him?"
trust him? Mhm.
And I was still kind of hoping that Killmonger was going to turn out to be an okay dude. But in that moment too, I was kind of confused why they all trusted obviously evil Doctor Strange. Because
Right.
with his like goatee and his like, like the the
Like, clearly, like, very vampiric
yeah,
looking cowl
yeah,
on his cape. And yeah, like if you're gonna just like do a compare and contrast of the two of them, if you're putting Killmonger next to, like, I guess, ultimate, or evil Doctor Strange, like, evil Doctor Strange looks infinitely more menacing. It's like his eyes are all hollowed out and his color palette is so dark and
yeah.
foreboding. Killmonger just looks like Michael B. Jordan, like,
And
you know.
and yeah, and Doctor Strange was by far the most powerful of that team they assembled, it seemed.
Hmm.
They wouldn't have been able to literally do anything against most of them wouldn't be able to do anything against fully assembled Infinity Stones Ultron if it wasn't for Doctor Strange being there and
Yeah.
having beefed himself up with absorbing so many demons or whatever he was absorbing. So
Mhm. Yeah, like, I mean, the power scale on that Doctor Strange is really, I think, is really cool, especially because that particular Strange is trapped within his own universe, until the Watcher felt the need to reach in and grab him for this particular mission. But yeah, I think it just really disappointed me that they pulled one villain for this team, and of course, the one villain is the one who goes AWOL at the end. Like, that's something that is really, it's so boring. Like, it's just so just so fucking typical of this type of storytelling. The whole episode, they're like, "Do you trust him?" Like, it would have been, I would my sub like my like interpretation of the show, my what's the phrase? My expectations would have been subverted if he wasn't the guy who went evil, right?
yeah,
Like, if Gamora had gone AWOL, I would have been way more like, wow, that's an interesting take. And correct me if I'm wrong, but another thing that I pointed out to my wife while we were watching was that was a little disappointed that all of the characters that they pulled for the team were characters that we had seen already, um, with the exception of Gamora, right? Like, I don't think we had seen that particular version of Gamora in a previous episode somewhere, right?
yeah.
Like,
And I guess the story behind that, not to distract you too much, so they were making an episode about Gamora in that version of Tony Stark, but I guess the animation studio that was working on that episode, they were hit really hard by COVID, so they weren't able to finish the episode in time for season one. And so I don't know if that episode got bunted to season two or if they just kind of scrapped it, but um,
sure.
there was supposed to be 10 episodes in season one of What If, but it went down to 9 because of that issue.
See, okay, that makes a lot of sense then. Well, I guess that makes a lot of sense then that she was included and that we didn't see that episode. But that then actually further proves my point of how boring it is that, like, this show is called What If, and we're just seemingly being given a random smattering of characters from this big what if universe of, like, what versions of what things can take place and what we can see. And then the finale, with the Watcher having to break his rule to reach into these worlds and pull heroes for talent to be able to take down this version of Ultron. that he only happens to pull from the many infinite universes that are available to him with the most powerful beings in existence. He pulls only from the characters we've seen in the episodes thus far. Like, to me, that seems a little boring. And I kind of wish that, like, I don't know, like Thor seems like a solid pick for a team like that. Maybe even Gamora, like being the daughter of the Mad Titan, seems pretty fair, right? But like Star-Lord T'Challa, like he's a good dude. He's not necessarily powerful though. Like, why would you
Yeah,
bring him in?
he's like a negotiator almost.
Yeah, right.
But I
Like, it
mean,
just
for he is a good thief, though. I mean, that was established, and they were trying to get the Infinity Stones away from
mhm.
Ultron. But I do get what you're saying. Like, without Doctor Strange being there, I don't think he. I think he would have been eliminated almost immediately. But um, uh, the Watcher Uatu did get Doctor Strange first, so it's almost like he knew that Doctor Strange was the most important one, and even Ultron came to that conclusion by the end.
Right.
This show, it was just boring. And you know
Mhm.
what? To be honest with you, I don't really like what if storylines because of that. I never have really liked them because they don't have any consequences, really. And
Mhm.
so I guess that was my main thing. Like it didn't feel consequential, and I just wasn't excited by it. Like there are so many other shows I've been watching recently that I've been way more excited about. But this one, it's like even kind of hard to talk about it just because it's not like it didn't. I wasn't extremely engaged by it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think there was a conversation on Reddit that I saw the other day, and I can't give credit where credit's due, other than to the platform. But
Here's what you do: you just say it was your own thought, and then I'll just believe it.
yeah, right. That's patently untrue in this case. But thank you for that. But like in the circumstance of what I read, it was more or less like you don't watch the MCU necessarily for the uniqueness of the storylines. It's more for just how well interconnected everything is. Like every storyline has like some sort of like line or bead that kind of leads to another storyline. Like all the characters and storylines and things like that really do a pretty darn good job of matching up across the board.
I think I may have seen the same comment. And
Yeah, and I think that's a good summation of the MCU in general. Like you're not like like the very overused phrase of subverting your expectations. You don't watch Marvel for that. Like that's not a thing you watch Marvel for. Your expectations are going to be met, I think, more than anything in terms of just the stories of each of these characters. But for how like the interpersonal relationships between the characters and then just how well connected and well thought out everything is, I think that's a much better take on why people watch the MCU in general.
yeah, I was just looking for this comment because I was hoping that I had saved it because I thought it was a solid comment as well.
Mhm.
Because yeah,
Yeah, and
if I remember correctly, someone was complaining about the quality of the MCU overall, and how it's almost like middle grade stuff, well, middle of the road stuff. Like some of the quality in MCU, they don't really challenge you, but the guy that responded, I thought had a great follow up, and yeah, it was basically about how it's all connected, and that's really what is selling the MCU right now. And I agree with it in a lot of ways. So
yeah, it's I guess if to put it like in a more concise phrase, the MCU is kind of like grown up Fortnite. Because like kids love Fortnite because of how all the things they really love and care about are all like compacted into one space, you know. Um, Like you get Star Wars, you get Marvel, you get like Ariana Grande now is in Fortnite, like all this craziness. Like
Yeah,
um
I
I
have to
think
admit, like,
didn't
I just know,
LeBron James get put into Fortnite too for
I have no idea what
like
Fortnite is
but
really,
like
but I'm guessing LeBron James got put in because of Space Jam.
yeah, because of Space Jam. And so like all these different properties get put into one spot. And I think that's why kids really love Fortnite, is because not necessarily because like gameplay wise it's amazing. It's that all these things that they're emotionally connected to all meet up in one place. And so like whatever your friend group is into, or what individual person in your friend group is into, they can find something that they connect to in some way. So the MCU is kind of like that, except that, you know, maybe you're a huge Doctor Strange fan, but you don't really care for any of the other Avengers.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool because you can find Doctor Strange in many other properties within the MCU. He's not the main character, but like he's going to be heavily featured in the new Spider-Man movie. So like you might not love Spider-Man, but you do love Doctor Strange, so you go to that movie anyway, right? So
Yeah. I had a pretty, I don't know if it was in depth, but I had a conversation with someone the other day about the MCU and just how, in his opinion, like they're like just no one, at least recently, has really like died and made like an impact. Like there's the each thing that they've been releasing, it hasn't really had any stakes to it. And I kind of agree with that. Like they're like his thing with like Iron Man and Captain America, dying, was that it kind of felt like that was the end of their story a little bit,
sure,
but there hasn't really been a time in the MCU where someone was like cut down in their prime, sort of.
sure.
And there may have been, I'm trying to think, there may have been an example, but like even like Bucky, I guess, who was cut down in his prime, didn't really, he obviously didn't die. Um,
Mhm.
but there hasn't been like a moment in the MCU where something traumatic happened
Mhm.
that lasted essentially.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, the closest I think we got was like something like Civil War, when
mhm.
the team fell apart basically, which did sort of last and it did have lasting impacts. And then obviously the snap killed quite a few of the heroes off, but I think that the impact of that was something, but you knew that they were going to come back. Um,
I think a good. I mean, like my pick for that might be Gamora, maybe,
well, I
but
mean,
even that was
yeah.
something that was reversed.
And
Like,
Joss Whedon's, his Avengers movies, he is good about killing characters off. So he did kill off a character like Coulson or even, Quicksilver.
mhm.
But other characters like Loki, who did die, I mean, that character did die, but technically he's still around, you know? So,
Right,
uh, I don't know. To me, I don't know if I want it to be sort of like a Game of Thrones esque world where
sure.
there's red weddings and people getting their heads smashed in, or even
Yeah,
like a Invincible or uh, the Boy sort of situation where there's like incredibly high stakes. Like I don't know if that's what it needs to be, but at the same
mhm.
time, I am getting the feeling that like there isn't any stakes, and it is the fun of it is the interconnectivity of it all.
Yeah. Well, I guess the shows and the movies are feeling a little repetitive or old in the same way that comic books do, right?
Yeah,
Like comic books do the same thing where they just rehash the same stories over and over again because one, it was good the first time, so why don't fix it if it ain't broke. And coming up with a new compelling villain or something for a hero that you love is challenging. You know, like
well,
look at
and
the
there is a business, obviously, business aspect to it too, which I would almost argue is the main aspect of that.
oh for sure. Well, like why do you think Joker keeps coming back a million times? in Batman comics.
Well,
It's
yeah,
because Joker is an inherently compelling villain to fight an inherently compelling hero.
yeah. I mean, that is kind of a lot of the stuff that happens, I feel, in comic books, like the Joker not dying or Batman not killing off his enemies. Um, it does almost feel like that's just justifying DC not wanting to kill off any Batman's villains
Mhm.
in a way. Like if you think about it that way.
Right. It's almost,
I
yeah,
know.
it's like a
Remember,
built-in
we
thing.
actually had a long conversation about the Joker in my like a potential graphic novel where actually Gotham, the Gotham that we've been living in, essentially is sort of like an AI trap that the Batman put Joker in, so he could constantly like
Oh
that's
yeah.
yeah, and so that's why the Joker like never dies and Batman never kills him is because that's sort of like a hell that like a almost like a I have no mouth and I can't scream sort of situation or the Matrix where
Right.
like it's just a mental trap for the Joker and the whole entire time that's why like Batman can do all these incredible feats and stuff is because it's all just a figment of Joker's imagination because Batman
Right.
can't kill him so he put him inside some sort of matrix which honestly makes sense in a way, like why wouldn't
Right.
Batman just like get at his enemy and like put him in some sort of like mental prison of his own creation.
Yeah, feed him exactly what he wants, but in a space where it's never going to hurt anyone. Like,
Yeah, I think
I think
that's a
that's a
cool
really
idea.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that's a really cool idea. Like, and it's because the real world variant of that is like Batman looks borderline incompetent. He can't ever handle this one villain. Mind you, he has an enormous rogue gallery, but like Joker amongst them is just a dude. He's a smart guy
Yeah.
who like knows how to get under Batman's skin, but outside of that, like a bullet would put him down permanently. Like,
Yeah. Well, I know like other like there's a lot of creators like Grant Morrison has tried to I think he has this whole theory about graphic novels and comic books and stuff, which is pretty interesting. Scott Snyder had like tried to come up with like that. He's basically and it's he never like spells it out. You can't really spell out what the Joker's origins are, but he tried to like make it like he was almost like a Dionysian god that has been around throughout history. And I haven't read Jeff Johns' new The Three Jokers. I'm kind of curious what that's about, but I haven't heard it's that great, so I haven't read it yet. But I mean, you had people like Alan Moore and
mhm.
uh, I don't know Frank Miller. He did year one, but I don't know if Joker was actually. I don't think he was, but I mean, they've been trying to make origins for the Joker forever. Um, but again, I don't
Well,
really ever
and
think he should have an origin. What Jack Napier or what was it? Arthur Fleck from the new Joker movie.
yeah, the one with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I think making the or having the Joker have an origin story inherently makes him less scary because the less you know about the Joker, the more like terrifying he is as a villain. You know, like like the Penguin is Oswald Cobblepot. You know, and like so there's like a backstory there about like what he's like as a person and what his background was like. Whereas Joker is always, I don't know, like I think of that quote from The Dark Knight of like, he ran a background check and checked him and like he has no background and he only has like knives and pocket lint, you know.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think he's essentially what he's become is an agent of chaos. Like he's
Mhm.
he's almost not
He's
even
just
he's not even a person even. Like he doesn't have a backstory. He's just like it's man versus nature at this point. It's like here
right.
comes the Joker. He's a hurricane.
Yeah, right.
Like you just gotta batten down the hatches.
And it actually like I will say that it's been fun watching the Harley Quinn show for that reason. Um because it definitely like it takes a different spin on a lot of these tropes from the Batman universe in particular. Like Batman is a character who in the show is like so stubborn and will like fight against all odds despite how like injured he is, and like it screws him over on multiple occasions of like he's injured, he shouldn't be fighting, but he goes out anyway and ends up losing badly, and like it really fucks him over. And like Jim Gordon in Harley Quinn is just like a relentless alcoholic. Like he just is completely useless as a police officer anymore. He's much more interested in being Batman's friend than he is at like being a commissioner. And like it's all very funny and like tongue in cheek. And it's nice being able to see that different take because it shows that DC is willing to like not take
Yeah.
themselves so seriously.
I do like that about DC. I feel like they're more willing to give a bunch of different versions of their characters,
Mhm.
but Marvel Studios basically is setting all of their shows within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think kind of limits them on what they can do,
Sure.
unfortunately. That's why I was kind of disappointed when they were saying they're making all these new animated shows, but they're all going to be. I don't think they all need to be set within the MCU. Like, let them get a little bit,
Let
like,
him
give
get
them some
crazy,
freedom. Yeah,
right? Like, I don't know. Part of me wanted Ultron to just win in What If. Like, fucking,
yeah.
why
Just
not?
well, like, yeah, go with the just like go with kind of a crazy decision. I would have respected them more for it.
Mm-hmm. Or have Killmonger like do what he did at the end of the episode, take control of the Infinity Stones, and just win. Like he gets his way, and the Watcher is overthrown, like or whatever the hell. Like just do something different. Like it's a cartoon. Like the rest of the MCU doesn't necessarily need to be affected by what happens in the confines of this animated universe.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if that's not going to be Marvel's sort of Achilles heel in this whole thing because they're obviously the most dominant studio right now, and
Mhm.
I just feel like they put out a lot of content and most of it's good, but it's rarely great. Like they do have
Yeah.
some great stuff, but it's all sort of I'm gonna mispronounce this word. Homogenized. Sorry, that's terrible. It all feels kind of
No,
the
it's
same.
homogenized is the
Yeah.
word you're
See,
looking
I've read
for.
it, but I don't think I've ever pronounced it. Um, and I feel like DC has way more freedom to kind of do some wild things. Like I know the
Mhm.
Suicide Squad didn't make a lot of money, but I loved that movie. I thought it was great, and they went for it. They just let um,
They went for
James
it, right?
Gunn do what he's gonna do, and I thought it paid off for letting him do that. But then you also have other movies like Wonder Woman 1984, which I guess they gave a lot of creative control to Patty Jenkins for that one versus the first one, and that didn't really pan out. So the quality control with DC is not where it is with Marvel, but at the same time, I think they're good, when they're great, they're great. But
Mhm.
Marvel, I think, risks not being able to become that. But we'll see. Like I don't know. I think Spider-Man and Doctor Strange both have the potential to be really awesome films.
Well, and I feel like I don't know. I think
And Thor actually, because it's by Taika Waititi. The new Thor coming out next year. So
actually, this is actually a great thing to bring up. I hadn't even thought about bringing this up. Um, Wife and I just watched the new Mutants just the other day, and I don't know if you've seen that movie, um, which like is a weird movie in that it was caught in like movie limbo for the longest time. Like we saw trailers for that movie years ago, and and then it just disappeared. Like it got brought up. It had this kind of weird premise of being kind of like a horror movie almost set up within the realms of the Fox X-Men universe. And then all these movie deals happened in the background, and this movie got shuffled around a lot within
when
all of
COVID
that.
happened, yeah, a bunch
And
of different
COVID
deals.
happened, and then the movie finally got released. And my my wife and I live in Texas now, and we have a tradition of that we call Whataburger and What the Fuck. So we pick up Whataburger and we watch a movie that is going to seemingly be bad on purpose, like because it's just fun. And we picked this movie, and it was actually not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's how it usually is. You know.
But I will say though that New Mutants is an hour and a half long movie, and it feels long by about an hour.
Yeah.
It's like a 30-minute exposition for like the climax, and like the first hour of it borderline just doesn't matter. But like that movie had some like had the ability to do something different, and it did, I think, and it introduced some mutants that like I wasn't super familiar with in that universe, but like that universe doesn't even matter now, right? Like, which is kind of a bummer because I think some of these characters could be cool in their own right, if they were to like.
Have you heard any of the leaks from the new Doctor Strange movie?
No, I very purposely keep myself isolated from that stuff.
Damn, because that would be incredibly fun to talk about, because that's going to
Well,
be a crazy film.
okay, so what you've heard, is it more story beats or like who's going to be there or like in it?
Well, I mean, it's a podcast. I kind of wanted to say what it is because I think that would be fun to talk about, but I don't want to
Well,
spoil you. But
let's discuss it. Fuck it, let's do it. Like,
okay, well, I mean, and this isn't confirmed or anything, but it seems that somehow Doctor Strange is going to end up in another multiverse reality, and he confronts the Illuminati. So the Illuminati in the Marvel universe is like a group of superpowered characters that come together to kind of like I don't know if it's like they're typically portrayed as good people. So I think Iron Man is on the Illuminati generally, and so is like Professor Xavier and
so is this like a canon group within Marvel is the Illuminati, or it's just like more of a okay?
Yeah, but the Illuminati that he runs into, it's gonna be, man, I kind of regret. It's Professor X, played by Patrick Stewart.
Ooh, okay.
Apparently an Iron Man, and played by you're gonna love this, Tom Cruise. A version of Iron Man played by Tom Cruise, and Wanda, a version of Wanda.
That's
And
not Elizabeth Olsen.
it will be Elizabeth Olsen, but she's actually apparently gonna be the main nemesis in Doctor Strange. Like, she's going through all the multiverse, trying to basically track down a multiverse reality where her kids are still alive.
Okay.
So she's the main villain in that film, apparently.
Oh, well, okay. Well, then that's almost kind of boring in that, like, the version of Wanda we know that, like, we've had all of this connection with, like, isn't going to be the villain.
No, she is. But she is.
According to the leaks, this is that Wanda.
Yeah, so she's going through the multiverse trying to find her kids, but the Illuminati version of Wanda in this other universe is actually a good version of Wanda.
Oh, okay. So,
yeah.
Okay, so they have juxtaposed. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, I will say that if any of that's true, I love the idea of them bringing Patrick Stewart in as Professor X, because I mean, like you and I growing up, like that was Professor X for us in the X-Men films. So I think that's really cool. Tom Cruise as Iron Man, as Tony. That, I mean, like the optics on that, like, are
I kind of love
really,
it.
I think it makes a ton of sense. Like, if you're looking at it just from like an aesthetic point of view,
and apparently
it makes a lot of sense.
They considered him for Tony Stark originally too, so it kind of was like full circle,
Man, if any of that does come to fruition, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, just and apparently they're gonna go full Wanda's evil in this film too. They're like going balls to the wall with that idea, which I love it when they do some stuff like that. I don't know. I hope it's not like a Daenerys Targaryen situation, but
well, see, here's the thing. Like, just as like an aside for that conversation, because you bring up Game of Thrones, I gotta do it. That whole thing with Daenerys in Game of Thrones bugs the fuck out of me, because you have this buildup of all these characters coming together in unique ways throughout the course of the whole show, right? And then like season 8 happens, and like Daenerys goes from being like a relatively level-headed character, with people whom she relies upon to like be her counsel, to being batshit insane and just like murdering people wantonly, all within the course of like 2 to 3 episodes. And like, it's so frustrating as a fan of the show to see this character who, like, Daenerys was a badass in the show, and I think that the end result makes a lot of sense, but how we got there doesn't make any sense. Like, it just was all just so boom, 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 boom. Like there was no build up to that moment. Whereas in relation to that, Wanda, we got to watch a whole show about her going batshit crazy, of how she like went through her trauma and was like dealing with the loss of her loved one, and then eventually getting a power that could let her not bring back Vision, but could possibly bring these fictional children of hers to reality. So like, between the two, like, Wanda makes way more sense for her to be evil now. I can fully accept that she's evil now, because like she took over a whole town. Like,
Yeah, and she also got essentially possessed by the Darkhold at this point, I believe. So
yeah,
I think
so
that
like
makes
I think
sense.
that's really cool. So like the comparison to Daenerys is noted, but it bothers me that like she went crazy seemingly so fast. There's no build up. Whereas like in with Wanda, it makes sense for her to be evil now. We've seen a track of why she would do that.
I personally like that character arc when characters go evil. So I was totally okay with Daenerys going, I don't know, evil, but just kind of becoming the Targaryen that she was born to be. They have some sort of phrase in that world, like flip a coin and the Targaryen's going to be crazy or not. They're known for being that way. But I was fine with what happened in the show. I do agree it was kind of abrupt, but I also kind of liked it. There's a lot of characters I don't think I think that they messed up a lot of characters in that show. We don't have to go into it too much because that would be like a whole thing. But yeah,
we should just have a whole episode talking about
like,
Game of Thrones.
just to complain about Game of Thrones. Yeah, I don't know. Like I agree. Like that the season 8 definitely left me feeling deflated and not that interested in visiting it again. You okay?
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. But I think what really killed me with that show ultimately was the battle at Winterfell with the White Walkers. I just felt like that was super anticlimactic how that ended, with just Arya jumping out of like the ether. I just thought that was completely stupid, and I felt like the White Walkers should have taken Winterfell and continued on down to King's Landing, because they've been kind of hinting at that outcome through the entire show, that like all this politicking down south, it was all just kind of like
useless
because the real enemy was coming down from the north, and they like by politicking and doing all this crap and like killing each other, they were actually harming their cause because they needed to come together to win against what was happening. It was almost like a metaphor for, I would say, global warming or any sort of thing like that. And I kind of felt like they sort of lost that when they just offed him off the I can't even remember his name anymore. What, the White King or something, with just Arya jumping out of nowhere. I thought it was so stupid, and it didn't even make sense. Like, where did she even come from?
Yeah, like, no, I agree, because I mean, if there is a catchphrase from Game of Thrones, like the number one phrase from Game of Thrones, like, what would you say it is? Like, off the top of your head, it's something they say all the time. It's said at the beginning of the show up until the end of the show. Like, winter is coming, right?
I was thinking of like Battlestar Galactica. It's like the Cylons are here and they have a plan. And they never had a plan. But anyway.
But yeah, like the whole freaking point of the show, and it's something they really nail into our heads, is that winter is coming. That's the like metaphor, the phrase that like winter's coming, like this season, okay, but like that is representative of the White Walkers coming into to cross the wall. And that whole storyline is completely just killed dead in Winterfell for like, yeah, no reason other than a little girl jumping out of the bushes.
Yeah. I just really think by the end of it, the writers just couldn't kill their darlings anymore. They had all these really popular characters that they just were afraid to kill. And I think ultimately, like I think what the one scene that probably exemplified what Game of Thrones became was the fight between the Hound and the Mountain. Like in the first season, you would never see this. Basically, they're on this staircase. The city's melting around them. They have like an action, like movie action fight, and they're like doing all these impossible feats. Like that never would have happened in the first season. It was just completely ridiculous. And it was all because of Clegane Bowl. And I mean, I supported Clegane Bowl. I wanted it to happen, but like just because of the craziness of what was going on, it just didn't have any stakes to it at all. It just was like felt like something from Fast and Furious 9 or something.
Yeah, no. Well, and you'll have to forgive me. I know them as D&D, the writers of the show. I don't know their last names initially.
Benioff and I can't remember the other guy's name. They were on the Always Sunny episode of the water park episode. Mark Benioff and I can't remember.
But like, from my understanding of things, part of the reason why they were in such a rush to end Game of Thrones was because they were being pulled by Disney to do Star Wars content, right? But then Disney dropped them like a, like a hot potato after how they handled the finale of Game of Thrones. That's been my understanding. And I could totally be off base.
I've heard that too, but honestly, I feel like I feel like that's just people making assumptions. I don't think anyone really knows except for the people who are involved in that. There's a lot of,
because I will say that like the only reason I give a little more credence to that theory is because it's been made relatively known that like HBO fully had the intention of giving D&D more seasons of Game of Thrones.
I've heard that as well, but they wanted to
expand upon the world.
I don't even necessarily fault them for that. Like they spent 8 seasons on this show. Like that's 8 years of their life. Like, have you ever had a job for 8 years? I haven't.
No.
So
but there's the thing though. Like, okay, I'm sorry, but like that. I know where you're going with that metaphor, but I disagree with it in this context. Like, if you sign on to like bring a book to film or to show, in the case of Game of Thrones, like you have so many novels to go through, and Game of Thrones has its own politicking in terms of like how many books have actually been written versus what's to come, because the books are still not done, which is crazy, mind you. But like, you don't sign on to a project like that willy-nilly, right? Like, you're in it for the long haul. Like, how many books have been written at that point. There are more books coming down the road. Like, don't sign on to the project if you're not willing to see it through. So like, yeah, it's been 8 years. Well, finish the fight, man. Like, like that. This just seems like such a bullshit excuse for them as creators. Like, take the time and do the project properly. Like,
Well, I mean, I can forgive them for not wanting to do it, but at least they could have handed it off to someone else who was. So,
mhm.
but
I would have much rather that have happened than like the huge like Game of Thrones is a series like for myself and for my wife who is like she is very well versed on Game of Thrones the novels in addition to the show, and like she never wants to go back and watch the show ever again. Like she has zero fucking interest in that because season 8 ruined that for everybody. Like you have 7, okay, I'll say you have like 5 to 6 really good seasons of this show. Season 7 for some people is like where things really started going off the deep end in terms of quality, and then season 8 just like outright kills it. And like that could have all been avoided if we had gotten like a proper send off for the show. See, this is what happens when we get off track, man. God damn it.
so
But
I know. Well, this show tends to inspire a lot of emotion because it, like, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I know I love that show a lot. Like, I just loved the characters, really interesting. I loved the world. I thought the world was really amazing. And I mean, honestly, this is a timely conversation because I just released like the teaser for the new uh Targaryen show coming out next year on
Yeah.
HBO Max.
Mhm.
Which I'm not that excited to see because of what happened with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I think just honestly, some of the Arya's arc was terrible. I think that's like once she got into the assassin school, like that storyline was really bad. Because she just became like some sort of crazy assassin after just like a year of training. It just didn't seem right to me.
Mhm.
Like, and she was better than Brienne. Remember when they were fighting? Like they're
Yeah.
like dueling for practice, and like that doesn't make any sense that she's better than Brienne.
Right. Well, and like Brienne of Tarth is a like that storyline in particular really bothers me because like Brienne
Jamie.
and Jamie, like Jamie, he's probably the character that frustrates me the most in the season 8 debacle because that is bullshit how they just like murdered that character.
I don't think he and Brienne ever should have had sex. Like I felt their relationship was more platonic than
And I
sexual.
would have been totally fine with that. It's more of just Jamie like abandoning everything he's ever learned, all this character building that's been happening, just to go straight back to Cersei
I
for the
mean,
sake of like one last fuck.
well, I know like that was controversial, but honestly, I think I was okay with that. I mean, I think Jamie should have maybe died up at the wall, or sorry, not the wall, but in Winterfell.
Mhm.
Um, I think the Winterfell battle is where the show really lost me entirely. I just felt like it it just completely like you during that fight, like you knew who was gonna live and who was gonna die just by the time like it got to the end of the battle because the stakes were just so ridiculously high, but all the main characters are somehow alive, but
Yeah,
everyone else
right.
was just dying. That was just really frustrating because Game of Thrones they had a reputation for being willing to kill off anybody.
Anyone, right?
But again, like the writers were just they couldn't kill off the Hound, they couldn't kill off Jamie, they couldn't kill off Brienne, they definitely couldn't kill off Tormund. They couldn't
Right.
kill off John. Man, I think the show should have just slowly just become entirely about Jon Snow and Daenerys. And a lot of the other characters that were interesting but had served their purpose could have died earlier. As much as like it's sad to see them go, but I think it would have resonated more if they had been able to kill off like Tormund at the Battle of Winterfell.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, like there's a lot of characters like that that they could have gotten rid of so much sooner. And I don't know, like we're still so off topic here, but
But what topic? We don't really even have a topic today, so I think it's
not
fine.
really, I guess. But
Yeah.
like I look at how they handled Jon Snow as like a huge issue too, because like for him to just like give in and to murder Daenerys, um, he was essentially peer pressured into doing that because it was the right thing to do. It's like John had never given into any kind of pressure like that previously. He always held his own with his moral high ground, right or wrong. John had his way, and he would do that. Whereas he, freaking dwarf, tells him like, "Well, I think you should murder Daenerys," and he's just like, "Well, okay," and like that's the whole thing. It just really kills me.
I was ultimately fine with that because I mean that is, you know, that's drama right there. He never he made a decision that he would put him in a situation where he, you know, it was something that he morally was questionable, you know, because typically the Starks, like they would, well,
see, the Starks were always very honor bound. Like they wouldn't give in to shit like that.
Well, I don't
Jon
know.
Snow was the epitome of that.
But if you look at like Ned, even in the first episode of this entire series, he was willing to execute the guy who had fled the wall, because it was for the good of society, or like their society versus. It was the honorable thing to do was to kill this guy, even though like he, in all intents and purposes, like he didn't deserve to die. He was fleeing for his life from the White Walkers. And it's kind of almost in a weird way like a reverse of what happened in the finale. Like, I mean, he had this woman that he loved, but it was for the good of their society that she died.
See, I disagree with.
But I mean, I think John was definitely, I was gonna say he was cucked a little bit. Like he just like going from being the hero of the show, I feel like he kind of lost most of his agency throughout like the final seasons, and he became way less compelling of a character.
I mean,
same with Tyrion. Like he just kind of became like he didn't really have a purpose to be there anymore, but he still was. He was just the hand of the queen, and that was it, all he was for the last few seasons.
Well, and I think like to be fair, I think out of all the characters that really got screwed, I think Daenerys was the one that got the worst hand. Personally, like there are definitely characters who should have died earlier because it would have been a more appropriate time for them to die. But like Daenerys really just like I think as a character development standpoint, like I guess if you're really going for like they constantly use that metaphor of the wheel, right?
Breaking the wheel.
Yeah, like to break the wheel, to like break the trend, to like change the pattern. That Daenerys fell straight into the pattern to be another Mad Targaryen. She fell into that super easily. And like Jon Snow, like I guess it fell straight into like doing the right thing despite his misgivings about what he was doing. Like because you're right, like with Ned, he did that same thing. He like the first episode of the entire show, he killed that guy because he abandoned his post, not necessarily because he had a good point or that he had something to say about a danger that was coming, but because it was the right thing to do. So maybe that's the whole point of the show, is that the wheel can never be broken. But what a nightmarishly frustrating story to present them. Like that's just really annoying for everything to repeat itself rather than like for some change to take place.
Well, I mean, I think who eventually took over, which is ridiculous to begin with, is Bran. But Bran was no longer Bran, right? He was actually whatever he was. Like, what would they call him again?
The Three-Eyed Raven.
The Three-Eyed Raven. So Bran technically wasn't even existing. He was someone entirely different. So I mean, you can make the case that that this was some sort of long con by the Three-Eyed Raven to become king of Westeros. Which I actually kind of like that. Like I don't see that explored that often, but Bran was just a wasted character in general. Like
Bran as a character is so frustrating because like he's literally quoted as in like not wanting any sort of leadership position at all when it's been offered to him. And then when becoming the king of Westeros comes up, he's like, why do you think I came all this way? Motherfucker. Like,
Yeah,
that's
well, like
so opposite of the message he's been sending the whole time.
which again is kind of plays into the conspiracy. Like he had a sort of a plan to become king, and I kind of believe that a little bit because like obviously he can like affect reality in a way, like he affected reality with like Hodor and stuff. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he was able to sort of influence events to get to exactly where he needed to be to become king.
See, but like, I don't know. If that were the case, if that were going to be the case, then I would at least appreciate like a look at the camera with a like wink thrown in or something. But like that never happens. It just
Well, I would say
Bran's just
that
like
line that you just quoted sort of is a wink to the camera in a way, because it is.
I just like
I'm not defending that decision. I'm fine with actually, in a way, like him becoming king. I like the conspiracy behind it. I just don't think it. When Tyrion's like, "Who has the best story of anyone?" It's Bran. I'm like, I think everyone.
yeah, right. Like what a bullshit excuse. Like I feel
And
like
like
the
the fact that
only
the other houses in Westeros agreed that Bran, who was a Stark, would become king, and then Sansa would still control the North, who is a Stark. Like so, the Starks basically control all of Westeros, and no one's like raising a fuss about it. I just think that's kind of unrealistic, but
oh, and I don't know, like I like another big misgiving for me was this whole notion of the Unsullied, you know, Daenerys's
yeah,
army
just
were
leaving
so pissed about
John.
Jon killing Daenerys. They're like, he must be punished. And everyone in Westeros is like, yeah, sure, totally. Punishment. Yeah, we'll totally do that. The Unsullied are satisfied with that answer and then leave without verifying like the death or a punishment or anything.
Yeah,
And they send Jon up to the north to
and
go
like,
serve out
and
his
for all
punishment.
intents and purposes, I think they are the most powerful group in Westeros at the moment because they still have like a Dothraki horde who somehow are still alive after that like massacre that happened up north.
Massacre at the Battle of Winterfell, right? Like, God, yeah, it just really like that moment bothered me for like a couple, like the semantics of it just seemed really dumb. Of like, all right, like, yeah, we'll punish Jon by Unsullied. Are they gone? Okay, cool. Jon, you can come back. You can come back to Westeros. We don't care. Like, what
Yeah.
are they gonna like leave someone to verify? Like, who text
Well, I mean,
messages don't exist. They could just leave. Doesn't matter.
I think ultimately though that's probably was the best result for John. You know, like he wanted to be free of all that. Like
Mhm.
he never wanted to be king. And like I stand by John's character actually. Like for the first few seasons, he was pretty awesome. Especially
Yes.
up to like that one episode where he is just staring down the Night King as he drifts off into like into the water, and then the Night King is just like, and then all these guys come back from the dead essentially. Um, that was probably my favorite episode of the entire show. Though I also do, beyond like the stupidity of Sansa not telling Jon about the Knights of the Vale coming, like the episode where he takes back Winterfell, I also love. Besides its kind of stupidity, just that scene where Jon is like staring down that like horde of horses coming towards him, and he's just like
You froze
out there
up.
by himself. Could you not hear me? What did you say, Matt? I'm sorry.
Nope, I'm back.
Okay.
Okay, repeat the last thing you said.
Oh, I was just saying that it's the stuff with Jon Snow, with him like staring down that whole brigade of horses coming down after him, being out there all by himself, was just an amazing image. And I know a lot of people don't like him dying and coming back, but I think there's like a lot of allusions to him being sort of like the Jesus figure in this story, and
Yeah.
how he sacrificed his whole, basically his entire, like being king to take down Danny.
His life, his happiness. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
and
So I do appreciate his character, and I like that whole honor bound thing. Like it's so stupid, but I like it. I like that the Starks will do least the Stark men always do the honorable thing for the most part. And when they don't is when they end up dead usually.
Yeah, the moment they get any ideas about like getting the upper hand is when they always get murdered, because that's exactly what happened to Ned.
And also Rob.
Yeah, and Rob.
Because he married the lady that he wasn't supposed to, because he already promised that he was going to marry one of the Frey's daughters, who turned out to be pretty attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones are just so good. And this is a discussion I've had so many times with different people, but like the writers of the show, D&D, do a fantastic job of adapting a book to the big screen or to the screen in a visual format. They did a really good job of bringing these books to life, but then the moment they ran out of source material, that's when things really seemed to go off the rails. And I think that like once the material from the books was gone, like they couldn't really hold up their end of the bargain in terms of the quality of the show. And because this is when I wish I had my wife here to fact check me. Like if I remember correctly, like I think Jon Snow is still dead in the books. Like he has been murdered by the Night's Watch or certain members of the Night's Watch, and that's where he still is at this juncture. And so the story in the novels has not proceeded any further from there in terms of like Jon's storyline. And I know that the author of the series, what is his name again?
George R.R. Martin.
George R.R. Martin, thank you. Like he was there and essentially gave them like the cliff notes of like how the book was going to end, and they were able to interpolate, what they would from that. But clearly, I don't think they did a very good job of interpolating. Like, I just don't think many fans were very happy with how the show ended.
Yeah, but I mean, also at the same time, like I do give them some benefit of the doubt. Like, not that what they produced was excellent or anything, but like that is quite the task to be given. Essentially, they have to end George R.R. Martin's series for him, and like they don't even have all the details, so they're still trying to produce a good show that people are still gonna love, but at the same time they don't still have his story to work with, like in all the minutia that they had before. So it was quite the task, and by that point the show had blown up to such a huge point. Like in the early seasons it was not near to where it was during those later seasons, like as far as viewership wise.
Well, and I think that's why they should have taken the additional time to do more seasons. Even one more season would have been better.
Well, and yeah, I think there's a lot of it too. Like, who knows? Like, maybe a lot of the actors, I don't know what their contracts look like. Maybe they only could have them for a while. Some of those actors have been on that show for years. You can imagine like how stressful it would be to keep all these people around. It's not just like
I don't know. Like most of these actors, like this was their breakout role, and so like they're gonna finish it through. And like from my understanding of things too, like given interviews after the fact, like a lot of the actors and actresses were not too horribly thrilled with how things ended either. Like it is painful to watch some of the interviews, like especially like with Emilia Clarke. She's just like, yeah, it's definitely a finale, like she clearly is not super happy with where her character landed. And like we've talked about, like I think where Daenerys as a character landed makes sense. It just they rushed it so badly.
Yeah, well, I think the show always was ultimately about Daenerys and Jon, hence the Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
It was always going to end up in that point. And I mean, and they were both technically Targaryens too, which makes it all the more interesting. So
Yep. Danny worked so hard to not have to like be with her brother, whom was a Targaryen, who would have likely tried to wed her in some sort of facet because of how Targaryens are, only to end up in the arms of another Targaryen. When anywho,
See, it's not a lot of the themes on the show are actually pretty excellent, especially when you look at John and Danny's characters. But I think a lot of the side characters they kind of got lost in. They, like I said, they couldn't kill their darlings. I just loved them too much, and I
yep.
think it shows. I think it should have just sort of slowly become a show about John and Danny. And I don't disagree. Like I do think the early seasons, they kind of subvert your expectations of what a traditional fantasy show would be like. But I do kind of agree that as the show goes on, it should become more like the tropes should be leaned into more. I think as an audience member and as a viewer and as someone that, is a human being and has, I think, the hero's journey in my DNA, you kind of need that sort of to have a satisfying story.
Mhm.
But I don't. I think you're right. I think they rushed it. I think that could have been done better, and I think they dropped the ball. Like some of the stuff, like Dorn, was just awful. That was just a terrible storyline. I feel like they just made it so they could have Jamie have something to do, him and Braun for like a season. But that was just
Yep.
pathetic. I don't know if you remember seeing that where they went down to Dorne and the sand snakes and stuff. That
Right.
was really bad.
Ugh.
I think like a part of it too is like, yeah, we need to get some female nudity into this. Okay, go down to Dorne
I
because all
know.
of our other
Like,
actresses don't want to show nudity anymore. So you got to get some of these other ones who will do it. Because like
well,
that
yeah,
first season with
yeah.
like Emilia Clarke, she was naked like almost every episode in like kind of horrifying circumstances. But as the show went on, she got naked less, and she also became an actually a really amazing actress by the end of it. She was really good. Like she was like the
Oh
first
yeah,
season, she
it's.
wasn't that great, but by the end, she was really killing it.
I feel like that's a very linear scale of like how much nudity you're willing to endure versus like what you're worth as an actor or actress is. Like, because like
Yeah,
the like most commonly in American cinema, like you're gonna see more of an actress's breasts the less important she is to the story. Like
yeah,
in like I think of every sci-fi movie, like every sci-fi made movie, the company sci-fi that's ever been made, like the main actress or like the main female character of a sci-fi movie is never going to show her tits, but every other like side floozy is going to show her tatas every chance she gets. And then the moment it's convenient, like murder movie villain comes in, kills the character dead, and that's as
well,
far as they'll go.
I remember, and I can't remember. I can't. It's either Tyrion's his love interest the first season or so, the first few seasons, the prostitute that he sleeps with.
Yeah,
I think she actually is a porn star in real life, if I remember
really.
correctly.
Hmm.
Not that, but the reason why I'm saying this is because there's also another actress early on. She's also a prostitute that
Mhm.
Tyrion sleeps with in Winterfell.
Yeah,
And she's naked almost every episode.
right.
But they killed her off in season 3, I think, because if I remember correctly, like there was something to do with like she didn't want to do nude scenes anymore. So it was something like that. And it was like that
Mhm.
season. It was like that this episode with like with what's his name? Uh what's his name? Like the one that Catelyn was in love with Catelyn. Anyway, he like has her killed off.
Oh,
I think
Littlefinger.
Joffrey, Leah Littlefinger. I think
Yeah.
Joffrey kills her or something. He like has like a crossbow and he like shoots her instead of like having sex with her. I don't know. It was like season 3 or something, and it was.
I
But
remember I remember the scene you're talking about. I just don't remember who gets shot.
she does, and like Littlefinger has like a monologue over it about like power and stuff. I can't, I
Mhm.
can't remember. Anyway, I this is all about Game of Thrones episode.
No, apparently we well, I mean, I don't know. I get like I mentioned that I watched New Mutants earlier. Um, if we're bringing it back to more like Marvel centric stuff, just based off of what we talked about at the top of the episode. I think New Mutants is a movie that's worth watching, but like don't expect anything too amazing. I think the plot is subpar at best, and I think the first hour of the movie is completely unnecessary. But like the final 30 minutes are very interesting.
Yeah, I just don't have much interest in watching it, to be honest with you. So I don't know what streaming platform it's on. I'm gonna guess HBO Max right now.
Yeah.
Is that right? Because that's one of those films that like was produced by Fox, like during that like gray zone with like the Disney merger, I believe, like you were saying. But HBO still Fox, the old Fox that still exists, but is now under the Disney umbrella, still had pre-existing deals with HBO. So that's why those Fox movies, which are technically owned by Disney now, show up on HBO instead of like Disney Plus or Hulu. But when that contract ends, I'm certain that will no longer be the case. But it's just kind of interesting how that works.
Yeah, like I liked. There were a few characters in that movie that I did like quite a bit. I would say that the main actress. I don't know any of the names of the character of the actors and actresses in this movie.
Well, wasn't one Arya actually?
Yeah, Maisie Williams is in the movie.
Yeah, and the guy from Stranger Things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the like nerdy photographer from Stranger Things is in it. Like outside of Maisie Williams, though, I can't tell you a goddamn thing about the names of these actors or actresses. Oh, actually, no. What's her face? The woman who's gonna be the voice actor or the voice actress for Peach in the coming Nintendo Mario movie. Shoot, that's gonna drive me nuts. Voice actor Peach new.
What did you think of the controversy dealing with that? Did you see
with Anya Taylor-Joy? Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy was in that movie.
What did you think of the controversy with the Mario casting?
I mean, I don't.
Okay, Anya Taylor-Joy, I believe, was the main actress. I want to say in The Witch. I hope so. Because if it's the same one, then was she in the Queen's Gambit as well?
Yes,
this is another actress.
Gambit.
Mm-hmm. She's a good actress, actually, and
she is very talented. As
Dude,
far as
The Witch is a great movie. Anyway, go on. If we ever want to get into horror films,
I do want to get into horror films. Well, for October, I think that'd only be
man.
Right? Like my wife and I, like we've both seen this movie already, but a friend of ours hasn't. So we're going to be watching Little Shop of Horrors, which, like, for anyone who's seen that film, like it's not really a horror movie exactly. It's a musical, but it's hysterical. And for anyone who's interested, I would definitely say go watch Little Shop of Horrors because it's so good. It's got the guy from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of his name.
Shoot. All right, I need to shout him out because he's such a good actor. Rick Moranis. Yeah, that's right. He's like, he was an actor for a while, and then he like left the scene because he had like some familial things he needed to take care of. Like I think his wife had cancer.
Yeah, I remember he was also in the Oscar, the Oscar nominated film Little Giants. Remember. I love that film. I should watch it.
But anyway, regarding the controversy of the Mario movie casting, I will say I think it is absolutely crazy the amount of talent that Nintendo has pulled with this studio to play characters who have seemingly never spoken English before. Like that's crazy. Like you have Mario being played by Chris Pratt, which is already like really weird and meme worthy all by itself, but like Charlie Day playing Luigi, and then Anya Taylor Joy playing Peach, Jack Black as Bowser, and then I think like of Key and Peele, I believe Peele is doing the voice of another character in the
I
movie,
think
and
Toad.
like yeah, and like Seth Rogen playing Donkey Kong. Like,
yeah.
what the fuck? Like, this movie has so many high level actors in it. Like, really talented people in the movie. Like, how many of them are even gonna have more than like 10 lines in the whole movie? Right? Like, it seems really crazy to pull this level of talent for a movie for like characters who have like never spoken a word before. Like,
Well, I don't know. I mean, they haven't spoken much, but they did. There was a voice actor for that they used for Mario for years.
which apparently, from what I've heard, he's gonna be in the movie. Like, it's an Easter egg type thing of like how he's in the movie. Which, like, I don't know. I've enjoyed the notion that like what was like I'm trying to remember the theory that I heard, but like what I've heard is that like Mario's dad is going to come into play, like the guy who does the voice actor or does the voice acting for Mario on a regular video game basis is going to be like his father.
Mario's dad. Wow.
Yeah,
I thought
right. Like
I don't know, man. I thought he was like, wasn't he like carried along by Yoshi or something?
I mean, he was still conceived
Baby
somehow, right? Unless Mushroom Kingdom's got some fucked up way of how that happens, but
I always thought they should. I was like, well, why don't they make a third brother like Mario's like mysterious third brother and make a whole game about that? He can have like a blue outfit. He can be like fat and short and squat.
nah, see, like he'd have to be. What would he have to be? Yeah, he'd have to be short, but I don't think they'd make him fat because they already have Wario. You have Wario for like the short, fat stereotype, and then you have Waluigi, and then you have Waluigi for the like tall, lanky.
If Waluigi isn't in this film,
Is it even
I
worth
can see
watching?
the internet just going crazy. But I've always hated.
Actually, that does lead me into a very close discussion on my part. The final Smash Bros. Character getting announced. Did you watch any of that or see any of that?
Yeah, I watched the announcement.
Yeah.
The little trailer they put together for it, which was kind of weird. I thought
Why do you think the trailer was weird?
because it had like all these. Okay, I guess I'm fine with them all like being frozen, but when Sora descends and like starts flying like an angel around everyone, they're like, "Oh, it's like what is happening?" I actually kind of wanted Disney to let them have like Mickey and Goofy and stuff in there too, but clearly that didn't happen.
Yeah, I really wanted that as well. I was honestly amazed they even let them use because like I'm pretty familiar with Kingdom Hearts up until Kingdom Hearts 2. I haven't played 3 yet. That is something that's kind of on my nerd to-do list, but like the base level of Sora's Keyblade, the weapon he uses, like it changes form based on the keychain that's attached to it. The base level of it is has a Mickey Mouse keychain on it. And so for that to be like so prominently displayed, I found really surprising because like that's Disney's logo is the Mickey Mouse silhouette, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of surprised they even let them use that at all. I am bummed out that like Donald and Goofy aren't included in the game at all because like those are Sora's buddies. But I thought it was a really cool announcement. Like as far as like far out there characters, like that's got to be the furthest reach they've had in quite some time.
Yeah, well, I think they did like a poll of the fans who the most pop like character they would most want to see in it. And I guess Sora Sora was the top candidate, at least in Japan. So I guess it's not surprising that they really worked for him, but that's the third Square Enix character they've added. Admittedly, like, I'm a little disappointed in their characters they've added in this more recent batch that you could purchase. Like, I kind of want them to include more Nintendo characters personally, but I know that's probably not a very popular opinion. But like, I was excited. I'm like, oh, King K. Rool, that's so cool. They're adding him in, and Ridley, when they actually added Ridley in, I thought was really cool. But I like that they added third-party characters or characters from third parties, but I kind of want the game to be more focused on Nintendo personally, their history.
No, I would agree. Like, I think that what has ended up happening with Smash, at least with Smash Ultimate, I mean, it's been 3 years worth of DLC. So it kind of seems like the base game of Smash Bros. Is where they introduce all of the new additions to the roster that like are just built into the game. And all of them seem to be very Nintendo centric or entirely Nintendo centric, whereas all the DLC ends up being like, you'll see Nintendo characters sprinkled in there.
Yeah, like
but you are gonna, like Min and things like that. But you're not, the majority of the DLC is going to be characters that reach out beyond the umbrella of Nintendo and be the third party characters, which I don't know, man. Like, I like where they've landed on Smash Ultimate, but I will say that like, I look forward to another Smash Bros game. But I want it to be on a new platform. Like, the Switch needs a big upgrade, I think, and I'd rather them continue the Switch platform rather than to move away from that again. I don't want to go back to the Wii or anything, or like the Wii U like that. Like, I hope they stick with the Switch for a long time.
Well, yeah, they did an upgrade for it apparently on the OLED.
I mean, the OLED Switch is not an upgrade. Like, it's an upgrade in terms of like, you have less bezels and you have an OLED screen, but the hardware of the system is basically exactly the same. A new kickstand is all well and good, but like, give me new hardware. Like, give me better hardware.
I like, there was like a recent update they did for the Switch, and they're like, oh wow, you can use Bluetooth headphones on your Switch now. I'm like, well, they could do that all along.
Yeah, like literally, it was just a switch they had to toggle at Nintendo in terms of software.
What?
And from what I've heard, like, it's already not been working super well. So maybe it was a thing they were having trouble like implementing, but I don't know, man. Yeah, I know I was really annoyed by that too.
I think for Sora too, I think I was a little disappointed that he seemed to just be another anime looking male character. I kind of wanted something different, I think. I don't know. And I agree with you too. I guess my concern partly is that this being Super Smash Brothers Ultimate and Sakurai, well, he always says it's going to be his last Smash Brothers game, but I mean, the man can only create perfection so many times.
Yeah.
But like, when they do end up making a new Super Smash Brothers game, there's no way they're going to be able to get all these characters back. And knowing Nintendo, like, they're not going to republish this game ever. It's going to be stuck on the Switch until it's dead. Yeah, until like your screen stops working on your Switch, or your Joy-Cons aren't able to connect because they're so shitty.
It'll be like 3 months. Yeah.
So it's cool that they were able to pull all these characters in, but it just seems like such a temporary thing. Because with other studios or other create, like, this game would always be available forever and into eternity until mankind dies. You know, it's like, once it's on Steam, it's not going anywhere. Or once it's on the Xbox store, it's going to be on every Xbox coming out until eternity. But with Nintendo, it's just going to die on the Switch, which is kind of a little depressing because a lot of these characters, like, you're not going to see come out in the next Smash game because they had to make some sort of backroom deal to get these guys into their game.
Yeah,
So
well, yeah, because I mean, I don't know, like he wasn't an official character in the game, but the fact that there is a Doom guy skin in Smash Ultimate now is that by itself, I think, is crazy. Like, there's a whole ass skin for a me that's the Doom guy from the Doom series. Like, that's wild, right? Like, and we have a Skyrim skin for the me characters. And like the fact that those characters are represented in any kind of way in Smash Bros is already like such a huge testament. But like, yeah, the odds of them being able to like pull that off again for a game down the road is so minimal. Like,
yeah. So I'm just a little, I don't know. I'm actually kind of annoyed with Nintendo recently. I'm kind of, and this whole like thing with like, oh, we're announcing an Animal Crossing expansion. Oh, you're gonna get Brewster. Like, screw you guys. Like, yeah, I'm supposed to get all excited for something that should have been in the original game when you released
mm-mm.
it. It's like, and yeah, Super
Yeah.
Smash Brothers is dumb too. It's like my main issue with that game
Mm-hmm.
is that they don't have any like. There's not a lot you can do with that game just playing by yourself. Like, I really wish they had like one of those like the speed run or the power up one player modes that they had in like the DS version of it or Smash 4. Like, I don't know why they didn't include something like that. And also the internet on the Switch sucks. Their servers suck. So even if you want
See,
to go and
that's
play online, like, you're kind of boned.
yeah, no, that I 100% agree. Like, I don't know, I have an Ethernet adapter for my Switch, but I am still held hostage to other people's internet when I play online, and that's partially why I don't play online on Smash Bros. Like almost ever. Like, I love following Smash Bros. And I love like the game itself and supporting it, but I have a hard time justifying playing it myself because it's such a frustrating experience when I um, play online because little Timmy in Zimbabwe apparently is playing off of his McDonald's Wi-Fi.
You needed to
And
get
like,
those street passes. Whatever.
yeah, man, like I'm fucking playing this dude who has internet that's like, like 3 kilobytes down, and we are slaved to his internet
Dude,
connection.
it is just such a damn shame that like they had the street pass on like the DS, which I loved. You know what I'm talking about? Why did
Oh
they
yeah,
never
no.
put that on the freaking Switch? That was such a fun component of the DS. Like, I love that.
I booted up my 3DS for the first time in forever, like literally this past week. And I had street passes from the last time I traveled, like in a large way. And a whole bunch of them were from Portland, is when I had brought my 3DS with me to go
Wow,
visit you. When Evan and I, when we weren't even married. Like,
that's crazy. Well, I mean, if you stop by like that's what I always, because McDonald's had some sort of weird deal with Nintendo. So if you
mhm,
ever went to like a McDonald's and your DS's Wi-Fi was on, like, it would
yeah.
connect with the McDonald's Wi-Fi, and you get like a crap ton of like street passes. I love that. That was so cool.
Yeah, like I thought it was a really fun feature. And but yeah, now like it's just yeah, their internet services need a big boost, and I like the last Nintendo Direct, like there was a big announcement about how they're going to be adding N64 titles to the Switch Online services, which is cool in its own regard. But the fact that we're going to have to be paying more for that really kind of irks me. Um, like I like that I could play Ocarina of Time on the Switch via this service, but how much more a year am I going to be paying? I already pay $20 a year for a dog shit service. It is bad. It is terrible. Like $20 like is might as well be a gift to Nintendo at this juncture for how badly their system, their online system functionality is. And you want me to pay more to play just the games part? Like, what about the actual services? Like, I want to be able to play online with like you, for example, on Smash Bros, without the internet feeling like it's coming from like circa 2005. Like,
Yeah, and also like they remastered both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for I think the DS, one of the newer DS models, and this is going to be an older version of the game, right? So, man, if Zelda was owned by a different studio, they would have remastered Ocarina of Time so long ago to like modern day graphic standards. It would have been beautiful.
We would like we'd be getting as many versions of Ocarina of Time as we have of Skyrim at this point. Like, because it's wild to me that we have the original from the N64, we have the GameCube version,
and they're all
we have the
locked on
3DS version.
And they're all locked on their respective devices too.
Yeah, like that's why I booted up my 3DS actually, was to play Majora's Mask on the 3DS. And I was like, oh man, Game Pass. I haven't looked at, or not Game Pass, Xbox. I haven't looked at like Spot Pass in forever. Street Pass, yeah.
Spot Pass, it might be Spot. I don't remember. It's been so long.
But yeah, like I jumped on it and I was like, holy shit! I have like 8 people like waiting in my lobby for the Street Pass games, and it was so much fun like jumping back into that.
Yeah. Well, it also pisses me off too. Nintendo's whole friend code situation. It's just so stupid.
Their net services are just really behind anyone else, and until they get that fixed, I don't see myself using their service. The only reason I pay the $20 a year is because by comparison, like I pay $15 a month for Xbox's like Game Pass slash Game Pass slash like PC Game Pass services that includes their online services. I pay $15 a month for those services because they are well worth it. There's lots of reasons to have access to those services. $15 is 3/4 of the price for Nintendo services I pay for in a year. And I couldn't give you a good bullet point reason for why you'd use the Nintendo services. They're just so bad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't really have a response, but yeah.
Anyway, I've been ranting for way too long. I know that I need to probably be letting my dogs out soon. So
it's time to
we
go.
have been recording for probably like an hour and a half at this point. So I want to thank everyone who has listened to this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast. It has been a grand old time. Yeah, we barely talked about What If, and let's be honest, it's because What If as a series was interesting to watch and had very little to talk about.
What if was interesting?
What if I gave a fuck? But yeah, I want to thank everyone for listening again. This is a fun podcast to record. We get to just kind of bullshit and talk about things we're interested in, and I'm hoping someday we will have community feedback. I'd love to hear back from people and have discussions about the things we talk about, and Q&As and things like that. That would be a lot of fun. But until we get there, I'm going to thank my invisible audience for the time being. And with that, Nick, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to say before we close out?
I just appreciate everyone out there. I think you're a great person.
I think Nick summed it up very nicely. Thank you everyone for listening. You all have a wonderful evening, and we will talk to you guys next time on the next episode of the podcast. Take care.